And for people hoping one day to have kids, they now have fewer options in the state of Alabama. The state's largest hospital system, the University of Alabama at Birmingham, officially suspended in vitro fertilization services, IVF. And experts say more are likely to do the same. Why? A decision on Friday where the Alabama Supreme Court ruled that frozen embryos qualify as children. That ruling stemmed from a wrongful death lawsuit brought by 3 couples in Alabama after their embryos were mistakenly dropped and destroyed at an IVF clinic. But it now raises all kinds of legal questions, and Kent has been trying to get those answered for everyone today.
Yeah, Jana, the first question many have is whether this case will be appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm told that is very unlikely because this decision doesn't involve federal law. Instead, it's based on Alabama's Constitution, which the state's court says establishes that human life begins at fertilization, even in a lab.
The Alabama Supreme Court has now put the court in a corner that if it were to weigh in on this case, it would have to make some determination, most likely, about when life begins. And even as conservative as this court is today, I'm not sure the court has the wherewithal to do that at this point.
U of M professor Tim Johnson says with the Supreme Court unlikely to hear an appeal of Alabama's state ruling about frozen embryos, he wouldn't be surprised to see other IVF providers follow the University of Alabama Birmingham in hitting pause.
I think that that's where this is going. I think you are having lawyers huddling with doctors who specialize in IVF, and they are trying to decide what they can do, what they can't do, and whether or not they should continue to even offer IVF treatment within the state of Alabama.
He says the immediate concern is about wrongful death lawsuits, since the Alabama ruling came in a civil case.
But the assumption is, by saying that life begins at conception with the embryo, that would naturally lead to that next type of ruling, which could potentially, if not for sure, criminalize such actions.
The other part of the ruling is it's not clear whether or not you can take your frozen embryos from Alabama that you currently have and transfer them to another state.
As an OBGYN and laborist at North Memorial, Leslie Jager says she's saddened but not surprised by the ruling.
I'm glad I live in Minnesota, where we have better protection. If you just look at the march against reproductive rights, it was kind of the next pin that was going to fall.
Those leading the march against abortion nationwide are applauding the decision, including Minnesota Citizens Concerned for Life, which said in a statement today, "We oppose the destruction of innocent human beings, including those at the embryonic stage." A spokesperson added that IVF can be done in a way that avoids that concern, but that now remains to be seen in Alabama, and even if it happens, Leslie says it will likely price many hopeful parents out.
In vitro fertilization has become less expensive over time because we do have the ability to safely freeze embryos so that people can use them in future cycles and they don't have to go through all of the medications again. So if a cycle fails, or even if a cycle works and you want a second child, you might have some embryos frozen that you can use. The problem becomes what happens if you have 1 or 2 children and have 8 to 10 more embryos. It's $1,000 a year to freeze embryos. This law tells you that you can never destroy those embryos.
No matter how much or how this gets sorted out in Alabama, Johnson says it's likely only a matter of time before we see similar cases and rulings in other states with similar constitutions to Alabama's. That includes Arkansas, Kentucky, Missouri, and Oklahoma that all have passed laws declaring that life begins at fertilization. Jana.
So you can see how it easily could just be duplicated once those states see it worked in Alabama.
Yeah, that's essentially what they're saying. First, they would have to have a case to be brought, but certainly we've seen that with the Dobbs decision happening in other states. Tim says that's likely the next step in other states as they see this as a blueprint.